Hi everyone, so this video is all about AO2 for your essays on Frankenstein and Handmaid's Tale for Edexcel Prose Unit 2, but also will serve as a really good reminder for you about AO2 and how it's really important that you signpost it for your examiner and that you construct it really well in your essays. So it's not going to be a surprise to you that I'm going to start with another caveat. There are lots and lots of different ways to write your AO2. There are no rigid rules. There is just this absolute necessity for you to ensure that you have explored the writer's craft. And that means talking about language, structure and form, and that is essential, that you need to talk about all of them. And that's the only golden rule. The things that I'm going to talk to you about in this essay, which is, in this video, which is kind of some of the just reminders about how you can write your AO2 up are just ways that you can use in the exam so that you can get through your essay writing effectively. But this isn't kind of hard and fast. This isn't, do or die stuff. So just kind of remember that. So I'm going to go through for you exactly what analysis is. We're going to have a little look at what analysis is and what it isn't, and then talk about the importance of signposting your analysis. We're going to have a look at a little bit at literary techniques for both Frankenstein and The Handmaid's Tale, although I am going to have separate videos on those for you. So that's kind of going to be a different thing. Then we're going to look at embedding quotes, and you're going to do some practicing writing, embedding quotes and signposting AO2. And then I've got some reminders for you at the end that you might just want to screenshot. That's up to you. Okay, so what is analysis? So one of the reasons why it isn't exactly brilliant to have open texts at A level is because you do need to know these texts inside out before the exam. You can't rely on having the book with you to be able to flick through and what do I want? You want to be able to go with, absolute speed to the texts, to the sections of the text that you want to use, to the quotes that you want to use, and you want to be able to talk about them because, remember, we only have time to do a 10-minute plan. You want to have this precision and this precise focus on what you want to say. And so you don't want to be sifting through the text looking for quotations. You want to know what you want to say and almost have those quotations ready to go. And one of the benefits of kind of creating a pool of quotes that you could talk about numerous things for is then that it makes it easier for you to do that. So we have this academic style that we want to be able to do, this laser sharp focus on what you want to say. As well as being a laser sharp, you also want to be detailed and sustained. And so we really need to understand what that means. So I've got this quote here that is, that really brilliant quote by Victor Frankenstein. I beheld the wretch, the miserable creature whom I had created. And I'm just going to talk you very quickly through what analysis is and what analysis isn't. So the very basic level, commenting on the text then. So this would be where you purely show comprehension of the texts and it just takes the literal meaning and translates it into their own words. So Victor Frankenstein hates the monster he has created. He sees it as being cursed and evil. And that just has taken the information that we have understood from this quotation and just rewritten it in our own words. And that is one of the dangers that we don't want to get into doing this. There is no purpose to doing this in an A-level essay. All right, explaining the text then. So Frankenstein hates the monster he's created. So that's the same idea, perhaps because he realizes the evil of his own actions. So yes, this sentence goes beyond commenting on the text. It gives a reason why Victor might hate the creature. It's attempting to understand, but really it doesn't give us any kind of literary discussion. It doesn't talk about any of the words that are used or what they suggest. It doesn't dig deeply into the text. There's nothing about what's written in this sentence that says, I'm a student of literature or a student of this text. And that's what you're aiming to demonstrate to the examiner. Okay, so exploring the text then. So we see often sentences or groups of sentences written like this in essays, and they may be surrounded with some other, the word something suggests, but really there is this kind of focus on ideas. So the hatred Frankenstein experiences upon seeing his creation is perhaps rooted in his guilt. All right, so that's exactly the same idea as the previous sentence. He hates the monster, evil of his own actions. Frankenstein seemingly realizes that his philanthropic intentions was driven by blind ambition, and this fatal flaw leads to his own downfall. So it discusses Victor's guilt, his ambition, his fatal flaw, his philanthropic dreams. It shows quite a lot of knowledge about the text, but it does not show any critical or evaluative understanding of how the writer has created that meaning. This discussion could be about any section of the text. And so when we talk about analysis, what we mean is a tight focus on the language. So you can see here, I've taken the two same ideas. Shelley here demonstrates that Victor Frankenstein's hatred of the monster is rooted in his guilt. Exactly the same idea. Focus on what the writer is doing. This is something that Shelley is creating. She does it for a reason. And then at the end, Shelley is perhaps highlighting that Victor's philanthropic intentions were driven by his blind ambition and that he is incapable of seeing the evil of his own actions. It is this fatal flaw that leads to his downfall. So same ideas. And then in the middle, we have this tight focus on the language and structure of the words that are used to justify this idea. The use of wretch here implies that Victor sees the monster as cursed. The broken utterance, signified by the dash, creates parallel phrases. The wretch, the miserable monster, which focuses the reader on Victor's reaction to his creation. It is the monster who is the centre of Victor's horrors. This parallel structure is repeated through the I seen at the beginning and the end of the sentence, suggesting that while this horror exists in the centre of his experience in this moment, his thoughts always begin and end with himself. And so we have a discussion of the phrase wretch. We have the discussion of the broken utterance, the structural devices. So the parallel structure, the kind of the bookending of the sentence with I, making sure that everything begins and ends with him, the creature in the middle. We have the discussion of the I. We see then that there's much more about this character and the themes, and each time we talk about it, deeper meaning is applied. Okay, so what does that mean we need to have? It means that we need to have a really clear and deep understanding of the techniques that appear in these writers' works, and how we can apply those techniques to these writers' works. So this is a very quick summary of some of the techniques that you will see in Atwood's work. We've talked about nearly all of them. I'm going to do a separate video where I go over again postmodernism and metafictional strategies that are used. We'll talk more about biblical imagery in The Handmaid's Tale as well, but these are some of the things that you're going to look for. So you have a look at those quotes. Nothing is going on here that I haven't signed up for. Be really easy with that piece of modern writing, first person narrative, to just talk about the idea. that Offred's saying that this, she says it's not rape, doesn't she, in the ceremony. Nothing's going on here that I haven't signed up for. Be very easy to talk about the ideas in the text and not talk about the language. And I want you to think about the language here. Okay. Offred hasn't signed up for anything, has she? Why? Think about it. The word signed up. What are women not allowed to do in Gilead? All right, smuggling precious national resources over our border. Okay, so again, what are the techniques? Okay, what is implied with the language? All right, very similar techniques used by Mary Shelley in Frankenstein. We've got, again, the unreliable narrator, the non-linear narrative structure, lots and lots of motifs, the use of setting, sentence types, again, this idea of doubling and intertextuality and biblical imagery. So it's super important that we have absolute clarity about the techniques that we can talk about that are used. All right, okay, so once we know what quotes we want to use and we know what we're going to say about them, we need to work out how we write it up effectively. And step one of that is embedding your quotations. So because the texts are longer, it's really important that whenever you use a quotation in your essay, you give it context within the novel itself. So you have it as part of a sentence that gives the location within the novel, so that you are really signposting your AO2 for the examiner. And there are right and wrong ways to do this, and I want to kind of demonstrate them for you. So if we're talking about embedding a quotation, so you can see here, I've got the quotation that I want to use from Frankenstein with an anxiety that almost amounted to agony. I collected the instruments of life around me. And of course, this comes from Victor as he's just about to wake up the creature. So how do we embed this text? So you do two things. Every time you want to embed a quotation, you do two things. Firstly, you say where it's from. Secondly, you say what the idea is. Okay, this is what I most frequently see. In chapter 5 of Frankenstein, Shelley describes with an anxiety that almost amounted to agony. Okay, that's not what I mean when I say where is it from. All right, this is not what we're going for. When I say you write it in a sentence that gives the location in the text, I don't mean the literal chapter number. I mean within the narrative of the text, within the story. So we're looking more for something like this. As Victor prepares to awake his creation, that's where is it from. Then, what is the idea? Shelley foreshadows the self-induced misery that will follow with an agony, an anxiety that almost amounted to agony. I collected the instruments of life around me. And then we get into the signposted AO2. So I've said here Shelley's use of. Now think about, from this, what would you pick out to talk about? We've got amazing alliteration. Now we don't often talk about alliteration in novels because it is really a lyrical sound device that lends itself more appropriately to being analysed in a dramatic text or in a poem. But we have Victor here, and of course he is giving his testimony to Robert Walton verbally, and so we have that lovely kind of, he does all of these literary, dramatic, theatrical devices, doesn't he, as he speaks, an anxiety that almost amounted to agony. And you can talk about that build up to that central agony. Okay, the centered eye, we talked about eye bookending in the last parallel one. This time the eye is central. We've got the instruments of life. There's all sorts of things that you could talk about here with your use of the lovely kind of the techniques. All right, let's try another one. So this is from the ceremony. And so this is above me towards the head of the bed. Serena Joy is arranged, outspread. Her legs are apart. I lie between them, my head on her stomach. And I'm, using this, the ceremony, because you wouldn't believe how many essays get handed in on The Handmaid's Tale that pretend the ceremony doesn't exist. And as much as we don't necessarily want to talk about it, and it is meant to be super uneasy for us as readers to read, we have to tackle the ceremony in our essay writing. So where is it from? What is the idea? We're not going to say in chapter 16, Atwood describes. We're not even going to say that when describing the ceremony, Atwood says. We're going to say something like, Offred's unemotional tone throughout the ceremony, so we've said where it is, highlights how oppression has disconnected her from reality. All right, and that's the idea that I'm going to be talking about as I then get into my AO2. In this description, Atwood underlines, and then we've got parallel sentence structures. Above me, Serena Joy. Her legs, I lie between. My head on her stomach. We've got obviously the women being doubled. We've got this use of pronouns, I, my, her. This idea of this interchangeability of the woman and the female. We've got the use of the female body, head, legs, stomach, the ideas of the male gaze. We've got this performative language. Remember that Gilead is all about creating these tableaus that are structural performances of inner doctrine, and that is exactly what this moment is. And so we could go on to write some really nice analysis of how Offred is unemotional, how she's disconnected from reality by using these techniques. All right, so this final slide is just one that where you can kind of have a little play with different ways to overtly signpost your analysis. It can be a little bit clunky if you're using the word something. And so you want to vary the use of your AO2 sentences. So I've given you Atwood's use of, and then you can put the technique in. I've given you lots of variations for suggests there. And then you can think about how you can build on your analysis. The audience, how is the reader positioned? The reader is positioned against, in favour, to feel, to think. Alternative interpretations. The image could also represent. The writer uses something coupled with something else. So this idea of combined effects, and that's really good if you have seen something in a quotation that you want to mention, but you've not really got something to say. So let's have a look here. This, that the alliteration is there, but you haven't really got a lot to say about why it's there. So you could just say Shelley uses the alliteration combined with the I in the centre of the paragraph, and then of the sentence, and then you talk about the I, and you've just noted the alliteration, talking about the effective techniques, and then tracking, further developed. This idea is further developed later in the text. And this would be really good if you're talking about motifs, the motif of flowers or colour through the Handmaid's Tale. You can name check even in your analysis. So you can go, the motif of the red from the kind of fairy tale through to the crucifixion scene, and you can track, the red of the tulips, the red lips in Jezebel's, the red smiles, the red shoes of the handmaids that have been executed in the salvaging. And you could use all of that, and you can just track how something is developed through a text. All right, so you're going to plan out your AO2. You're getting to the point where you're going to be writing your whole essay. So what I really want you to do is to think about the quotations that you've chosen for your AO2. Are they quotations where you can say 4 things about them at least? Are these quotations, and you can see here, these are longer quotations because that's the sort of thing that we're going to need to be using at A level. If you can pick something out of just one very short sentence, that's brilliant. But if you can't do that, then you're either going to need to have 2 quotations to support your thesis from one text, or you're going to need to have a different quotation where you have got lots of things that you can say about it. All right, so make sure you've planned your AO2 out. We're not at the point where I'm asking you to write yet, but now is a really good time for you to focus on the quotations that you've chosen for your AO2. Have you got enough to say? All right. So the next video then, I'm just going to do a video for you again where I go over postmodernism and metafictional devices in The Handmaid's Tale. So that's just something where you are going to have a little bit more that you can say in terms of your AO2 analysis. And then the final video is going to be on AO3 and how you write up your AO3 context. And that is, and then after that, I'm going to ask you to write your essay for me and send it in. So that's it for today.